Okay, just want to make sure this microphone is on. 1 second. Appreciate everyone who's joined us. Resume. Okay. All right, one moment. Just going to make a quick adjustment here. All right, Marlon and I were just trying to think of some more ideas of stuff we could talk about and coming up with topics and different things. Excuse me. Our tech is out today. I would have been mic'd up already. Did someone give him the day off? Wasn't me. You know, you know what we pay around here? I mean, I last heard it. Someone was at 78 cents an hour, and the benefits are great. All right, Marla.
0010110.
0010110. All right, how may we help? One moment. Go ahead. Proceed. Relax.
What dimension do you feel?
5, 6.
You want to talk? Let's see. That would be Bashar?
Yes. I mean, yes.
Okay.
In the way that you mean.
What information does Bashar have about the U.S. secret space program that you wouldn't mind sharing?
Oh, well, one moment. This is such a, one moment. Where do you begin? You just begin. Well, let's just say for a long time on your planet, and we could say certainly much more in the night, starting in the 1930s, 19 even 20s to 30s, and so forth and for on. Mostly in the 30s. If those of you who are familiar with the story of the Nazi Germany Bell thing, we could get off on lots of tangents here, but they had the idea of space travel at that time. There are many documentaries. We understand there may be some who are a little more familiar with these concepts than others, but it's quite all right. Marla, have you ever? I'm just asking. Have you ever heard about this? About you know about Operation Paperclip? All right, never mind. We digress. I beg your pardon, Marla. We digress. Okay, so this is and we're trying to actually kind of gauge how to pitch this because there's so many facets and possibilities. So let's just think in a general timeline of what you might think of as a general average timeline. And let's see, one moment. What was the question? Could you repeat the question? The secret space program. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Well,
For current day, what's going on right
current
now?
day. Well, we do work with many on your planet, some more directly, some less directly. There are some of us at Area 51. Let's see. Maybe. One moment. There certainly were at one time. One moment. But would you like us to try to delve into that more? Or?
Well, I heard that Area 51 is mostly for tourists, and that there was
Well,
a 6-mile road underground
yes.
where the real stuff is.
It goes down roughly 6 miles as a placeholder, very deep in the ground. Yes. Did you have more questions about this? Or? There are certainly other places on your in your country and all over the world where there are enormous bases and cities underground. You've heard of this deep underground military base?
Oh,
Bueller.
yes, I've heard of some
Bueller.
underground places, but I didn't know they were military.
Well, they're a combination of things. Uh, they're military-ish. They're also for how do we say this? Some of the less than positive beings on your planet. One moment. Did that make sense in your language?
Yes.
All right. Did you have another question about this idea? Or?
No. With the secret space program, will there be any spaceships landing soon? They're talking like March 19th or March 20th.
Well, I believe as we touched on before, we're landing actually quite often in different versions of Earth, right? Do you understand this? Or does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
I mean, just because it's much like how your news story works, i.e., on any given day, I think we may have done this before, but just briefly to touch on it. On any given day, the channel may read certain headlines, and you may read totally different headlines. So that's for you at that moment that news comes to you. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so at any given day, anyone can read different headlines and different information could potentially, it really comes from you, but, come to you on your phones and perhaps televisions, what have you. So there's information which exists that the channel has been very familiar with for a long time. But uh, one moment. So some of these questions get a little tricky to answer, is what we're trying to get at. Because there are, if we may, there are many, many, many things going on in and around your planet, on your planet, underground, that 98% of you know nothing about. Does this make sense?
Yes.
And these are placeholders. It may be closer to 99, 97, just depending on which topics we're talking about. Now, some of the big ones, it's not, some of the issues or stories which are talked about most, and if we may, the idea of what you call chemtrail is one of the ones that we could say at least 50% of you roughly have heard of this. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Now, how do we say this? And half of you think it's real, and half of you still think it's just a bunch of junk. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And we're not here to tell you what to think or what to believe. And now we're not even really necessarily here to say anything about that issue in particular. We're trying to explain or convey how the energy of stories work on your planet. Does this make sense?
Yes.
All right. So generally speaking, 100% of you know your alphabet, right? 100% of you know the name of your president. 100% of you, generally speaking, can count to 10 or whatever. We're just trying to use general things to explain the point. So the idea is, even as you're kind enough to interact with us on this dimension from this plane, the channel at this point can potentially access so many different things in the Akash and on different dimensions that it's almost impossible to give really direct, specific answers. Does this make sense in some way?
Yes.
All right, then. And we may have lost our point. Excuse me. What was the question?
We were wanting to hear about the secret space program. Is there anything important that we need to know that the mainstream media is not sharing?
Well, just the simple fact that it's real and it's happening and it has been happening for a long time. Generally speaking, again, I think as we touched on earlier, since it definitely picked up a great deal, shall we say, in your 1930s and from there on. And imagine it's been, what, almost 100 years, 80 years-ish, whatever, since this began. So if I may, just imagine, in the 1930s, I think you maybe still had the Kitty Hawk. Let me think. Gasoline vehicles were just coming around. One moment. Television, late 30s. At any rate, what was our point? One moment. Please understand. Imagine if the common average person got their first television in 1939, but the technology was actually 80 years in the future of that idea of a TV, are we making some sense?
Yeah.
So what is actually known by a small percentage of the people on your planet is generally information that is easily 25 years in the idea of your future and probably closer to 100. So if you use your imagination and ask yourself, where might we be in 25 years, 50 years? What could we do in space? Imagine now, and if we may, just ask you this question. We do not mean to put you on the spot, but if we may, could you imagine in 50 years your planet can fly faster than the speed of light? Probably, possibly, maybe, possibly. All right, possibly. And we get this because we understand what you've been informed of. Does this make sense?
Yes.
However, they are already doing this and have been for quite some time. Does this make sense?
It does.
But they don't advertise these things. Does this make sense?
Right.
It doesn't mean the information is not on the internet. The channel is not aware of these things, but that's sort of happenstance because he enjoys this stuff. And
yes.
I guess I got a mess there. Something just happened on my phone. Excuse me one moment. I'm just going to pause this real quick. Hey, everyone who's joined us. Crap. Did your phone make a noise or was it mine?
No, I turned my sound off.
It's all right. Let's just get back. Sorry, guys. Can we keep going? I feel like
001.
0100010. All right. If you could just reposition us a little bit. Where were we?
We were talking about the
Secret space program.
Yeah, the secret.
The idea of the secret space program, and we talked about the fact that it definitely picked up in the 1930s. There's much information about the gentleman you know as Hitler, Adolf Hitler, and his team discovering uh, what you call a UFO and time travel, space travel, not time travel, but the ability to fly at an incredibly fast rate, probably faster than the speed of light. So, if we may, this is kind of when it was happened. It'll do. Does this make sense?
Yes.
So, imagine if your government has been able to fly at the speed of light since 1930. Can you imagine what they're doing now?
Wow.
I mean, do you want to make a guess, please? I mean, just
It's
use your
probably
imagination.
almost instantaneous.
Absolutely. Instantaneous travel. Yes. Do you have
That
other
is
guesses?
possible.
In the way that you mean, yes. Yes. It's not teleportation,
Mhm.
and yet it is. But like your Star Trek teleportation, unless you want us to go into great depth here, it works sort of like that. Does that make sense? Would you
Okay.
rather hear more about this, or you want to proceed?
I'll proceed.
All right. So, can you imagine what other things might be possible on your planet already? And it doesn't have to be just space travel. Think about all the applications to medicine, to education,
Right.
every aspect of this experience. The television. Your television is a mind controlled device.
Yes.
Okay. You're aware of this. Okay. Thank you. And we didn't mean to sound rude. Excuse me. That's what it is. If you look up the history again of this, uh, we could try to pull it up, but it's not necessary. But if you look on your YouTube and your internet and look about exactly how and why and who created the television, you're going to trace this back again, most likely to the Nazis in the 30s as a placeholder. But it was known of before, but anyway, as a placeholder. And they figured out they had this way to create this device, and everyone would put one on in their living room, and they could literally convince anybody of anything through this because of the way it connects to the brain and the pineal gland. Does this make some sense?
Yes.
All right. Would you like us to say more about this, or?
With the secret space program, will they be announcing that pretty soon in America?
Mm, like a large scale announcement?
Yes.
One moment. Um, it's already, again, there might be 5% of you who've heard of this. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
So, one moment. And maybe 10, no, 5, 3, maybe 3. It doesn't matter. One moment. Probably less than 3. All right, relax. Um, so we're talking about for 99.99% of the population. When might this be known? Soon? How soon? We don't know what soon is. We need a date. Do you have a date in mind? Soon. One moment. What's the date today?
How about by April 27th?
April 27th, 2019.
Correct.
Now, all we can really do is try to gauge how many people might have heard of this by then. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because the way things roll out, for some people, they have to hear it from the president or they won't believe it. And for other people who are, paying more attention to other things, once they know all their truther friends are saying it's legit and real, then they already know. Does this make sense?
Yes.
In your language? One moment. So one moment. We're just looking at average population, general percentage of being aware of the idea of your military or people on your planet, shall we say? Because we don't need to go into that. Relax. Being aware of the idea of traveling faster than the speed of time. All right, now it's roughly, it's not even 3%. Is it 2? Is it 2? 1? We'll just go with 1 because we don't have to get too specific. Maybe 1% of the people of the planet have at least seen this story on their newsbook feed. It's less than 1. Crap. Just let's go give them the benefit of the doubt. 1% have possibly heard of this at this point, and it's less than that, but 1% now, and the idea of a target date of April 27, 2019. The average person having heard of this or seen this on their Facebook or social media major media, any media in some form or fashion does increase, relax. What's the date today?
March the 9th.
March 9, 2019. March 9, 2019. So we're looking at target date of April 27. That's, I don't know, roughly 27, 45 days. We're going to say 45 days from now. 45 days from now, give or take. Let's see, one moment. We're just going to try to convert this into Earth numbers. It does go up. It does go up quite a bit. 3%? 3%? Maybe? 5? Maybe 5. Potentially as high as 5? Is it potentially higher? Not likely. 5%. 5, 4, 3. I'm trying to give us the benefit of the doubt here. I'm working for us, Brody. How many people are going to know this by then? It does go up. Does it go over 1%? Yes. Yes. Most likely. 2%? We hope. All right. That would be 1 out of every 50 people. So we're going to go with that. Does that help?
It does.
And we're being optimistic, but we trust you guys. That's actually, if you were to hit 2% by April 27 of people on the planet who's at least seen the story or someone mentioned it or shared it, and this is what we're here to tell you. Share that story. Share that information. Share it. We want you to wake up. We are your friends. We've said this before and we'll say it again. There's no one here coming to harm you. We assure you. I mean, you don't have to believe us, but I mean, for the love of Pete, we're just saying, first of all, why would we do that? What purpose would it serve for us to come to your planet and land and shoot you with a laser? A, we don't really have laser guns laying around like you guys have machine guns and handguns. I'm just saying. Because we don't deal in weapons. So
no weapons?
no, I mean, if in a let's say in a 1,000,000 to 1 chance you find some booger out here in space, you can like call your buddy Larry who's got a laser, or you could make one real quick if you had to. You know what we're saying?
Yes.
But the odds of this are like 1,000,000 to 1, or maybe less than more. You know what I mean? So anyway, what was the point? So why would we come there and harm you? I mean, that would be so, as you're Spock. It's so illogical. It would be highly illogical. It would be first. Let's also say this, because if and not that we would even entertain this idea, but let's run this by you. If we were to do that, if our civilization, our group, our collection of beings, which is just a small portion of everybody who's here to help and protect Earth, there are thousands of spaceships around your planet right now. You've heard of this right now, right?
Oh, yes. I heard there could even be like 100 or to 150 different.
There are many species, many
yeah,
intelligences, many beings. Would you like a number?
Sure.
Oh, one moment. We can see what we can find. There's now, and because, well, we'll just say very quickly, because of the way densities and dimensions work, we can just look at it from our particular aspect of the 5-6D perspective. Does this make sense? Meaning this question alone, from a certain perspective, we could say about 100. Whoops. And from another perspective, we could say about 2,000, depending on how we look at it. Does that make sense?
Of course. Okay,
so generally in the way that you mentioned, like 150, that will do as a placeholder. I mean, it's definitely more than 100 from our perspective. It's probably closer to 1,000 even from our perspective. But yes, ma'am, go ahead. What was your question? So, the idea is, so if we were to say, hey, Larry, let's go down there and use our lasers and take some of their $20 bills, what the hell? We don't want your money.
That's right.
We're just saying. So we're literally trying to walk through this and explain what benefit would it be because, all right, just for discussion, just to have fun with you and play scary alien man. All right, let's say me and Larry decide to go rogue. We like zoom down there and land on the White House lawn and we shouldn't even joke about that. And, shoot a dog with a laser. We don't mean any harm to dogs, but, do something that would be considered scary, which again is so ridiculous. But anyway, let's just try to get through this. let's say me and Larry, we land on the White House lawn, we pull out a laser gun and we shoot a dog with a laser and unfortunately harm this animal. What I mean, how do we say this? Because we don't want to even say or suggest we do this to a human being, but we're trying to say if we came down there with a weapon and harmed life on your planet, there are at least 150 other civilizations watching. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
So first of all, we'd never even be allowed to do that. We wouldn't even entertain the idea. But let's just say out of the 100, I heard a noise, 001010. Let's just say out of 150 civilizations out here, one goes rogue. There's 149 other civilizations, more than that, but watching them, and they'd already know ahead of time this guy has that's negative energy going in, and they would probably just gently create a force field and push us back out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so but let's just say they were on break, like one of us is around here a lot. Hello, Bueller, is this on?
It is. We're on 001 0110.
So you're still on break or with us?
We're with you.
Thank you. The help around here these days, kids. All right. So, so even if we were to like sneak in while they're on break and land on your White House lawn, well, then we're going to have about 30 snipers pointed at us from your White House tower, and we're exaggerating, but do you know what we're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So that would be like, so does it? Are we explaining how nonsensical it would be yet, or do we need to review this?
No.
Okay, so we've covered the idea how completely preposterous it would be,
Yes.
and then if no one's even actually out here. There's no negative. We don't see any negative beings right now. If you go out to like further out into what you call outer space and look at different dimensions, yeah, there's some boogers out there, but everybody picks their nose once in a while. It's just something you got to do. It's not the end of the world. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
So you're saying there are ETs out there that are not kind.
Yes, I mean in the way that you mean. Yes, unfortunately.
And do you have a number or percentage?
Oh goodness. One moment. Civilizations. One. Maybe 10. I don't know. Does that sound fair? 5. More than maybe 10 to 12. Because it works on different dimensions as well. But now, if we may, and 10 to 12 is a rough guess because the way energy works out here. But let's just say 10 out of the 50,000 we know of might be boogers. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. We're trying to say it's kind of like your KKK, or excuse me, with no offense to KKK members, but they exist and they're just idiots, so you don't really worry about them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Would we like to close here
Sure,
on the
absolutely.
space program?
Thank you, Marla.